Murata and 1 just dropped a new Redraw chapter where Boris and Blast are retconned out, our new waifu is gone, and the entire Saitama vs Garo fight is now extended to include a god-level feat. Hey everyone, I'm JoshInspires. Welcome to a video where we'll analyze and go over One Punch Man's Chapter 164 Redraw that just came out. To start off, before we get into the specifics of the chapter, here's everything that was changed from the original 164 as follows. In the original chapter, right at the beginning after Lightning Max and other heroes find Pig God, it cuts to Garo punching Saitama angrily and telling him to quit messing around. In the redraw, we see angry Garo yelling before he goes back into action between the two. In the fight in the sky, Garo is pummeling Saitama with a barrage of blows. Garo originally had his internal exchange where he realizes that no amount of technique, speed, power, etc. will be enough to stop Saitama. But in the redraws, this internal monologue is removed from this portion, and the events are switched around to different places. There's also an added couple of panels in the redraws where Saitama deflects Garo's attacks, and where Garo then remembers how those people he accidentally saved saw him as a hero, and he uses this anger to do his extreme power attack of pushing Saitama into a volcano. In the original, Garo just clasps Saitama in his hands and then pushes him into the volcano. In the redraw, we see Blast and his friends' silhouettes instead of the members like we did in the original, which included our new waifu, Boris, and what seems to look like Beast King. So as of now, these guys don't show up in the latest chapters. In the original chapter, we get these panels before Saitama uses his double normal consecutive punches combo. Also in the original chapter, Saitama's consecutive normal punches punch Garo out of the crater in a spiral fashion. But in the new chapter, it seems to be all over the place and then blasted out of the crater. In the new chapter, this is now where we get Garo's internal monologue exchange trying to think of how to beat Saitama. In the original, after Saitama punches Garo through a couple of mountains, he lands and is seen what seems like pitying Garo, but in the redraws, Saitama is drawn much more menacingly and says nothing. Garo also seems to see Saitama as similar to the other people in society, and also claims that Saitama is the epitome of unfairness. So in the redraws, Garo uses this to fuel his final dash towards Saitama. In the original, however, Garo was more tired and exhausted, realizing that he had no chance of beating Saitama, and that he would feel grateful to die by Saitama's hand like a true monster. So it's his last stand to die by Saitama that pushes him into his final dash. But in the redraw, Garo exclaims that he can't lose to Saitama, and this is where the original and the redraw take drastically different turns. In the original, Saitama grabs Garo's fist and tells him it's enough already and there's no point in keeping this up. Saitama realizes Garo has a lot of problems mentally with heroes and monsters, so he says that they can talk it out, and the original chapter ends with Saitama and Garo chilling in a house while the moon symbolizes God eagerly watching their conversation. In the redraw, however, things take a much different turn. After Garo exclaims that he can't lose to Saitama, Saitama punches Garo, sending him flying into the air and breaking him out of his monster shell, and a swirling cloud envelops overhead while all the heroes and civilians notice the sky is getting darker and clouds appearing. A swirling vortex of clouds appears beneath the moon and God's foot stomps out of it. Everyone watches in horror and both of God's feet appear into the world. In this chapter, we still get Blast and friends talking about how the dimensional barrier was disrupted, and that's most likely what allowed God to come through in these couple moments. Saitama and the rest look off into the sky seeing the clouds appearing everywhere, and Garo sees God. Well, not God exactly, but he does see God impersonating Bong, and then Bong reaches out his hand to offer Garo power, and Garo accepts it. He then lands back behind Saitama, who's staring into the pitch-black sky, when Saitama turns around to see Cosmic Garo. Saitama isn't really sure what's happening and is asking Garo what happened, and Garo takes a stance like Bong's and prepares to attack, and then the chapter ends. As you can see, this redraw pretty much changed the trajectory of the entire story in one fell swoop. Instead of God being somewhat present and passive in the background, it seems that God has now directly intervened through Garo, probably to take down Saitama, who is the fist that turned against God, and now it seems that either God is controlling Garo, or that Garo himself is taken a part of God's power, like what Homeless Emperor did. Now that we've discussed all the changes, we can talk about what exactly happened and what this means for the story and characters of One Punch Man. So first off, why the drastic change? The entire tone and theme shifted and took an entire 180, where before it was being funny and tongue-in-cheek, now it's being dark and menacing. Of course, we can't really know for sure unless 1 and Murata come out and explain why, but some fan speculation thinks that the last chapter was a decoy chapter, simply pushed out to appease the release schedule. Of course, some people blame Murata and think that he's the reason the manga is not a one-to-one recreation of the Monster Association arc, and that 1 was trapped in a basement but finally broke out and is now in control of the story again, even though 1 has been writing the story the entire time. The most logical reason, however, is probably just that one changed his mind and decided to edit the events. Because it was clear from before that the fight between Garo and Saitama wasn't completely over. But if they had started fighting after having their heart-to-heart, it probably would have ruined the flow of the fight. Having God intervene before Garo is defeated when he's at his lowest of lows allows the fight to continue without trampling the themes. And it's cool as hell. Also, it seems that we finally got an awakened Garo, and it seems that awakened Garo did have God influence put upon him. In the original webcomic, Garo beats the S-Class heroes and we get a panel of the sky with words saying something like, "I'm listening." Obviously similar to God saying, "I can hear you" in the latest chapter. And in the webcomic after that, we get Black Sperm exclaiming that Garo really transformed. Though not as much of an obvious difference as in the manga, where Garo now turned into an Eternity lookalike. But one of the fan theories in the community at the time was that something or someone, like God, was watching the whole time and was influencing Garo's transformation. Though not as apparent as the manga, where God just straight up interferes, the idea that God has something to do with Garo's monsterification and power boost and possible limit breaking was there. Now in the most recent chapter, Awakened Garo is obviously God's creation, similar to Homeless Emperor. But that's the most important part of the chapter. The other big thing is that God literally appears, or also possibly mentally appears, because even though the civilians in Saitama react to the weird clouds, they don't seem to see God's feet, only Garo does. And even Garo doesn't see God, he sees his master Bong. So of course, this could be another thing of God simply appearing before the people he chooses to. But as Blast and friends in the original chapter seemed impotent on not letting God through the dimensional seal, we know that God physically exists somewhere. But we also have to wonder if this is also God projecting himself into Garo's mental sphere, or something like that, the same way he projected himself into Tatsumaki's sight while pretending to be Blast. We won't really know until more information is available, but what we do know is that in some capacity, God did basically directly appear and obviously influence Garo, because I mean, look at him. Another interesting thing about this is that Garo did actually become the God-level threat that he dreamed of becoming. And also, after Garo awakens, we get this nice panel that parallels exactly how Saitama entered the fight originally with Garo. Then we get Garo's God Fist, which is going to be the weapons God/Garo uses to counter the fist that turned against God, aka Saitama. Some small changes that are also kind of big is that the Blast and Friends scene, as discussed before, has been removed/downgraded. We don't get Boros' possible brother Boris anymore, nor the waifu or Beast King. So maybe they'll be saved until later towards the end or after the fight. Also, just speculation on my part, but probably what will happen. The heart-to-heart scene with Garo and Saitama will probably happen after the fight, if it's not totally scrapped at this point. If I had to speculate, and this is also kind of possible spoilers, so skip to this timestamp if you don't want some slight spoilers. I would theorize that since most of the S-Class is already taken out and not really conscious, that Blast and friends are going to be the ones arguing that Saitama should finish off/kill Garo now, because Garo is a threat or whatever. Blast and such will probably argue that because God took over Garo's body, that Garo is now a threat and should be taken care of, but Saitama will probably be the same as he was in the webcomic and say that he's not going to kill Garo because Garo is clearly human. This also might be aided by people like Metal Bat if he's revived before Blast and such show up, and he might also argue on Garo's behalf, saying that he's an asshole or something, but he doesn't deserve to die. But that's just my thoughts on what will possibly happen after Saitama defeats Garo. Beyond that, it seems we're basically getting a God plus Garo combo versus Saitama, and it's also possible that Saitama is going to be tested by God here to see how strong he is. If we're taking the limiter theory as our basis, then Saitama breaking his limiter literally defies God, and it seems that God has become increasingly more aware of Saitama's presence, even if Saitama doesn't know or care about gods. So this might be God trying to exact control over things that are now out of his control, things like Saitama. Of course, this could be like how all things go in One Punch Man, and that being that God is underestimating Saitama and he's gonna get one-punched. That's my theory, though I'd love to hear yours in the comments below. We also get Saitama's double consecutive normal punch combo, but he just still calls it normal consecutive punches. In the webcomic, he referred to it as double consecutive combo or something like that, but it's possible he was just calling it normal to troll Garo like he's been doing this whole fight. Now that Garo is awakened though, we're probably going to see some more stuff from Saitama. I'm going to talk spoilers again, so if you don't want to hear that, I'd emphasize clicking off this video now. Before you go, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you and have a great day. For everyone else, we know that we're about to get Saitama's serious table flip moment from the webcomic, and since it's against God/Garo, we might see it on a larger scale than Psycho Orochi's continent flipping moment, which will look absolutely beautiful with Murata's art. I'm pretty sure that now that Garo is awakened, Saitama is going to have his signature line of, "I'll show you a little of how serious I can be," and that's going to surprise Garo/God because they're going to realize that Saitama hasn't been serious this whole time, and that's going to lead to the bigger scale of this fight where Saitama knocks some sense into Garo, even though he's now awakened with an insane power boost from God. Other than that, there's tons to pick apart in this chapter, but I think that's the highlights. What do you guys think? Anything I missed? Anything you want me to talk about? What do you guys think is going to happen? As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and leave a like if you did, because then I'll know I can make more of these. Anyway, I hope you all have